Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a little chat about humility and the judgment of history when it comes to deciding whether you like a piece of music or don't like a piece of music, or even more specifically, how much effort you need to put into liking a piece of music that perhaps doesn't particularly interest you initially. The reason this is coming up is because somebody wrote a comment. It was I was kind of appalled, frankly. I did a review of some Bartók stuff, or a video about some Bartók stuff, and this person chimed in with, how could you recommend Bartók to anybody? He's useless, he's shallow, he's evil, he's repulsive, his music is total waste of time. Of course, he's currently not as popular as he used to be because everybody's realized that he's a joke, that he was... he just went on and on like that. And I just had to sort of scratch my head there, like that, and say, what the hell? I mean, what is going on with this person? I understand that there's going to be a wide range of opinion about the value of, any piece of music by anybody, based largely on whether or not you like it or not. But there are certain objective criteria, I think, that need to be considered when you evaluate whether music is good or not. And then there's the whole question of your relationship to it and what that means. Needless to say, I deleted this stupid comment, but it's not that you have to like Bartók. You don't have to like Bartók. I mean, I don't like everything by Bartók, but you do have to acknowledge, if you know anything about music, even the slightest little smidge about music, that he was a masterful composer. I mean, he was formally brilliant. He was harmonically inventive. He was daring. He was visionary. He was incredible. And you can analyze these pieces and point to things that support that. And I believe anyway, that support that objectively. I mean, when it comes to Bartók's handling of form, you cannot say, as this person did, that he hadn't a clue as to what musical form should go and how it should be deployed in the service of musical expression. I mean, good grief. Bartók was one of the most dazzling composers formally of the first half of the 20th century in the way he handled musical material, in the way he constructed his large works out of smaller movements and smaller sections. I mean, he was really on top of that stuff. And everybody agrees. And that's the point I want to make. That's where we come to the judgment of history. There are certain things that I believe that in order to have a sensible conversation about music, in order to recognize that we all come from the same planet, you just have to accept. And the idea that Bartók is one of the great composers of the 20th century and a formal master and all that stuff, it's a done deal. It's not up for debate anymore. I mean, even if you could actually make the case using some kind of scientific or objectively musical analytical framework that Bartók was a total incompetent, the rest of the universe would disagree with you. And I believe so strongly that the purpose of all of this music is to entertain, amuse, enlighten, and move us expressively. And we have every right to like whatever we want to like and dislike whatever we want to dislike. But we still have to acknowledge reality. I mean, there is out there a reality, an objective reality. The objective reality holds that Bach is great, that Beethoven is great, that Bartók was great. I mean, it's just what it is. And therefore, for you to come out and say, well, essentially to deny the reality, everybody who thinks that Bartók is great is out of their minds. Everybody who thinks that, that he was a formal master is crazy. It just serves no purpose. other than to show how ignorant and unaware you are of what's been going on in the real universe. And I am a great fan of the real universe. I don't think we can do much or say much about music unless we acknowledge the real universe. When I made a video about my Bach problem, because I don't like everything by Bach, I mean, the hysteria that I got in terms of commentary was just marvelous to see. But it was my problem. It wasn't Bach's problem. It was my problem. I acknowledged that he was one of the great musical geniuses of all time. That doesn't mean I have to like it. That's a different issue. Part of this is a question of self-confidence. You know, there are so many people out there whose self-worth and validation comes from being part of a group or part of a clique or part of a cult, or having the universe conform to their own personal view of things. And that's sad, because I don't need to tell you. I mean, the universe doesn't care what you think, and it doesn't care whether or not it conforms to your view of what it should be or should say. And when it comes to the great composers and the great works of music, whether you agree or disagree is utterly irrelevant. You know, you need to have the courage of your convictions if you don't like something, and simply say, okay, I don't like it. But I acknowledge its greatness. I mean, Beethoven's Missa Solemnis is a work of staggering greatness. I don't particularly care for it. I really don't. But I understand people who do. I understand the point of the work and the intention behind it. And I recognize a great performance when I hear it and enjoy it. But it's not one of my favorite pieces. It's just not. And that's okay. You know, you live with that. You can deal with it. Some people can't live with it. They can't. And they're kind of crazy. And I see these comments pop up where you just have these outliers, and there are quite a few of them, who come, you know, raving along saying, how dare anybody, you know, bother with composer X when composer X is settled. Now, you could argue, and I think you could argue quite rightly from a historical point of view, that there were many composers whose reputation was settled and it became unsettled over time. Think about, you know, I don't know, Cimarosa, or, you know, some of the, you know, early or 19th century opera composers or piano people or whatnot who were just, you know, absolutely dazzlingly famous in their lifetime and who we no longer care about at all. Well, that happens. It does happen. And if it does happen, then we can say quite rightly that this composer's work did not sustain its reputation, or it hasn't up to the present time. Maybe it deserves to be revived. We can make all of those arguments. You really can. But when you're talking about reality today, you simply have to acknowledge reality today. I have no problem calling Bartók one of the greats. And if in 200 years it's decided that Bartók wasn't so great, I was wrong. But I was accurate in describing the reality on the ground as I see it today, so that we could have an exchange, a useful conversation about the value of this music and how much time and effort you should put into getting to know it. It's really that simple. And I don't think there's anything controversial about this. But I was thrown for a loop, and it wasn't just the Bartók guy. There were a couple other people, too, who just said absolutely stupid things. Not so much about the quality of the music or the quality of the composer, but about the judgment of history and what the consensus is. And you know, it's as if none of that exists because they don't like something. Gosh, that's weird. That is so weird. So I suppose the point of this whole thing is just, yeah, we all need to have a little bit of humility. I mean, not a lot, maybe. You don't have to have too much. There is such a thing as having too much humility, of throwing your critical faculties to the wind, of simply, becoming a lemming and following, whatever path you think is going to, validate your existence. I mean, that it goes too much in the other direction, too. Of course it does. But there is a reality out there. The reality holds that certain composers are great composers, certain works are great works, certain things, if you don't like them, it's your problem. It's not the music's fault. It's your fault. And you have to just accept it, and it's perfectly fine. No one will think any the less of you if you simply admit, as so many of you freely do, very admirably, I recognize that it's great, but it's just not for me. Fair enough. So that was my thought about this whole little, minor, perturbance in the, general atmosphere of love that we have for all of the great works of music. There are always those people. Always those people. Gosh, I don't get it. Anyway, keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.